Hi, this brief video is going to demonstrate how integrated asset management and portfolio management practices can help drive CIO strategic outcomes. One use case that we're going to walk through is where an asset management executive or professional seeks to identify opportunities for cost optimization within their estate and then seamlessly engages with their enterprise architecture counterparts to assess and then drive those opportunities to value realization. So we're going to start with having the executive from the asset side go to the asset executive workspace. Now, this is a dashboard that is available out of the box, ready to go for ServiceNow customers that have hardware and software asset management enabled, at least two of the three applications in our portfolio, the third being cloud cost management. Customers are free to design and create their own dashboards, and we encourage that, especially for senior executive or other personas outside of the asset practice that need that 30,000-foot view that you're seeing here today. So this persona has access to seeing the total spend, the value realized by the practice to date, and then key important item here is the potential savings opportunities that you're seeing highlighted. This use case is to identify potential savings. So clicking into this widget will take the executive into a series of removal candidate opportunities for potential savings that the SAM team have in turn been working on behind the scenes. And remember, what we were looking at was an asset executive or senior level persona perspective without really having to go too much into the weeds. But if they so desire to do that, clicking into this will take them directly into what work the software asset management team is doing. And a quick view on the right will identify some of the justifications, the majority of which appear to be the low usage of software. But the executive does see that there's at least one opportunity here to consolidate subscriptions. So to do that, the asset executive is going to go into the software asset workspace. So the executive is going to go into the overlapping usage module on the left. And this module identifies applications that have a number of capabilities that compete with other applications that do similar things. On the right-hand side, you see a similar view, but with cost or total spend overlaid on top of the number of applications within each category. So project management might be one worth looking at. They may not want to interfere too much with development or DevOps toolkits just yet. So clicking into project management will reveal three applications within the project management capability stack: Workfront, Monday.com, and Smartsheet, along with the total number of subscriptions, which now suggests that these are SaaS applications, the spend associated to those apps, and the adoption or usage. Clearly, Workfront has a decent amount of spend, but no usage at all, despite having several subscribers to the application. To understand a little bit more about all three of these applications and how they're being used, the executive can go into the application feature usage. Clicking into that and then down into the project management category will identify exactly what we suspected. There's no data, which means there's no usage for Workfront today. But out of curiosity, the executive can see that Monday.com and Smartsheet does have increasing spend over time and a wide series of activities within each of these applications. Maybe as a step two, the executive can question why Monday.com is predominantly being used to download files, where not too much collaborative work is going on. It's just really renaming files, downloading files, or adding files. Editing is very, very minimal. Perhaps retiring this application is also worth looking at, and instead having people redirected to cloud storage services like OneDrive or Google Cloud to be able to download files is a better investment that likely already exists within the organization than the spend that they're seeing here. But for purposes of this demo, I want to identify to the enterprise architecture team what it would mean if we retire the Workfront software. But let's say we had a number of applications that are competing for the executive's attention to retire or to decommission. We give you some opportunities to go into the renewal calendar module here to see if there's any contract renewal activities coming up for either of these applications that could help you prioritize where to start. So clicking into the renewal calendar tells us a few things. We can see that there was a recent Microsoft renewal that just completed. There's also 2 renewals that are coming up in what looks like a month and a half. So if I click on Adobe Systems here, this is the publisher. On the right-hand side, it gives me details about that contract record in ServiceNow. And as you can see here, it's Adobe Workfront. So how convenient. This one is coming up for renewal. We certainly don't want to renew something like this, especially if the adoption and usage is where it is. So if there were other applications here that were perhaps further down the renewal calendar, it might make sense to focus on Adobe Workfront first. So as an asset executive, that individual can either tap the shoulder of their software asset manager to do this next task, or they're simply able to do it themselves by submitting an application demand request to the enterprise architecture team to assess the application and to make a decision whether or not it needs to be discontinued. So I'll simply select the application from the list here, and we can say assess future need. We'll say software has no adoption and is coming up for a renewal in July 2025. And they can submit that demand. And that's it. So they've now armed and equipped the enterprise architecture team with some additional insights around an application. Number one being the usage of that application, justified low usage. And number two, the fact that there's a contractual event coming up. And that in turn can help the enterprise architecture team stack and rank that application demand against other demands in their queue. So now this has been submitted, let's switch personas, and we're going to play the role of an enterprise architect or of an application portfolio manager to assess the Workfront application to determine whether or not it can be retired. So we're going to go into the enterprise architecture workspace to make that determination. So here we are within the technology portfolio tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at business applications that present a lifecycle risk. So when we talk about a lifecycle risk, this is a piece of hardware or software or a combination that has either approached already its end of life, has crossed its end of life, may have even gone beyond the extended support of that asset, be it physical or software. Now, these are applications that are running on infrastructure such as servers and computers, either on-premise within the customer environment or within public cloud. It could be running in a data center governed by AWS, Azure, or GCP. Really doesn't matter. We're agnostic to where that business application is hosted, or on what infrastructure it's hosted on. ServiceNow software and hardware asset management products can determine through our normalization and enrichment capabilities what the life cycle looks like for that infrastructure, hardware or software. So we're going to click on View List to see a list of applications that present that risk. And straight away we see Workfront in that list. So if I expand that business application out, I see that there's 424 infrastructure components that support that application. So there's a series of computers, a series of servers. A lot of these infrastructure assets are hosted on virtual machines like VMware, so we can integrate with vSphere to pull down your clusters, your hosts, your ESXis as well. A lot of this is also deployed on physical servers, so Dell PowerEdge servers. These are all the server names associated to each of the pieces of software that are running on these servers. So SQL Server, Windows Server, these are all products that are running on these servers that are supporting the Workfront application. And if I scroll further to the right, I can see all of them have already exceeded or gone beyond the end of support date from the manufacturer. And again, this is something that we are populating. ServiceNow populates that data for all normalized hardware and software that's discovered within the environment. So clearly this application is out of support, adoption is low, it's up for renewal. This is probably a ripe candidate for rationalization. But before we make that final decision, the enterprise architect can go into the application rationalization module within the EA workspace. So here in this quadrant on the bottom left, I can see that Adobe Workfront is at sort of the bottom left of that functional fit to CSAT. suggesting it's again a ripe candidate for retiring that application. So this is how both the asset management practitioner as well as the data that the asset practitioner is a custodian of. So that's the hardware, the software data, the lifecycle data, the contract data, etc., as well as the financial data, of course, comes together with the enterprise architecture team to make strategic decisions about hardware and software and the applications and capabilities that those tools serve the broader organization. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.